Well, moving on to other news now, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's judicial reforms plan seems to be weakening the ruling party's hold on parliament. In a new opinion poll conducted by Israeli media, 69% of Israelis have expressed dissatisfaction with the government's performance. Benjamin Netanyahu's party, the Likud party, plummeted in the opinion poll, losing over a third of its seats it currently holds in parliament. This essentially means that if an election was to be held today, the party would fail to gain a majority even with the support from their far-right allies. Even 52% of the Likud's voters have given the government a bad grade. Popular support for the Prime Minister is also at an all-time low. Over 67% of the respondents, along with 44% of Likud's supporters, expressed disappointment at Netanyahu's performance. What is even more concerning is that 53% of those surveyed believe that the current government will be unable to finish its term. The bad news for Netanyahu does not end there. When respondents were asked how many seats the Likud would retain if elections were to be held today, the opinion poll said the party's seats plunged to 20 from the 32 it currently controls. This is a 17-year low for the Prime Minister's party, which last won a meager 12 seats during the 2006 elections. For what may be a loss for Likud is a gain for its opponent, the National Union Party. The National Union Party, headed by Benny Gantz, secured a whopping 29 seats in the poll, over twice the amount of seats it currently controls in parliament. If Netanyahu's party's far-right allies break away from Netanyahu's coalition, the regime would lose its majority hold on parliament, potentially triggering snap elections again. While no elections are scheduled as of now, the opinion poll has been conducted at a particularly critical moment in Israel. Netanyahu's troubles don't end with protests over the judicial reform that are now into their 13th week. Israel and Palestine tensions have also spiraled in recent days. Thousands of Israeli settlers, including far-right leaders, held a protest march in the Israeli-occupied West Bank in support of Israeli settlements and protests against the recent deadly attacks. And well, for the very latest on what's happening in Israel, we're joined by correspondent Jody Cohen. Jody, thanks very much indeed for joining us this evening. Now, one of the recurring themes, it seems, in Israeli politics is Netanyahu's rise and fall. Israel is going through a particularly, long string of crises: judicial reforms, the mosque fallout, and the tense ties with its neighbors. What is it going to be for Israeli politics and for Netanyahu?
Well, that is the question that seems to be impossible to answer. So many things happen in a given day, let alone a week, let alone a year in Israeli politics. But we do know that this Channel 13 poll has said that if elections were held today, Likud would go from being the largest party to the third largest party, so going from 32 to 20 seats. We know that the coalition as a whole would go from 64 to 46 seats, and that former Defence Minister Gantz would go from 12 to more than doubling to 29 seats. Now, there is a question about this poll, whether or not it's truly representative. It's thought to have taken place just before the Passover holiday, when a number of religious respondents would likely have been less available to take part in the poll. However, commentators are suggesting that if the poll is representative, this weakening of Likud doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to go towards elections. So weakened support for the coalition parties as a whole theoretically could even, in fact, and ironically, make the coalition stronger, because then they're more likely to stay united, stay together to prevent the opposition from getting into power, at least in the short term. That's the thinking. And then as we're speaking, tens of thousands of people are marching in the West Bank, or as they would say in Judea and Samaria, using the historic names for those areas. Now, that's not a protest against the government. It does include the ultra-nationalist Finance Minister Smotrich and National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. But the overall message of that march is one of unity and support for Israel in the face of terror. And of course, that follows unrest we've seen on 6 fronts in recent days: in the Jordan Valley, in the capital of Jerusalem, in Tel Aviv, and on the borders with Gaza, Lebanon, and most recently Syria too.
Right, Jody, thanks very much indeed for joining us with the very latest there on what's happening with the polls and the numbers as far as the Likud party and Netanyahu are concerned. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Let's move on.